So let's you want to talk about Afghanistan?
We can talk about Afghanistan.
Donald Trump, in his second term agenda, said he wants to put an end to these endless wars. And he's already tried to bring our troops back. And for me, that's why I supported Tulsi Gabbard earlier. Now I think the Democrats, they've got nothing to offer. I'm not convinced Joe Biden would do anything in this capacity. I'm curious what your thoughts on that is. Do you support the president in terms of getting our troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan?
That's a complicated question. I think right now I'm at the point where we need to bring our people home. But allow me to answer with context. It's a tough decision. It's a conundrum for a litany of reasons. We went over there to Afghanistan. Our mission was to find bin Laden, close with and destroy the enemy. But part of what we did was take care of the people. We made them a promise. And we saw the Afghan people come out of the woodwork to fight for their freedom. I mean, little kids, little boys come on the base, work on our base during the day with their dads. Little kids go to school, girls' schools that we built. We built wells in villages, and we brought food and water and taught little girls how to read and little boys we taught them trades. I mean, a lot of what we did was humanitarian work over there. And, Afghan patriots came out of the woodwork to fight for the freedom of their country. And I realize, and I know, and you need to trust me on this, we pull out of that country, in 3 months, every one of them people are hanging by a light post. I guarantee it. Every man, woman, and child that supported Americans in that country is dead in 3 months.
Wow.
And that scares the crap out of me. And it makes me wonder, do we look, it's complicated, right? Like our promise as the Americans, our promise should mean something to our allies. So I recognize that. Okay. So a humanitarian crisis could ensue in Afghanistan if we pull out, right? On the other side is that as a commander-in-chief, we have a duty and obligation to America's sons and daughters who suit up and go over there and go to war and risk their life for everything. And my issue with the Afghan war right now is that if you went over there right now, and we picked up this podcast and we just interviewed, 10 different American privates from different units that have never communicated together ever. What's your mission right now? You'd get a different answer from all of them. And that's a real problem.
Wow.
Because when you don't know and understand what the mission is, you don't understand what the mission is when you're out there beyond the wire, you're hesitant. And those seconds hesitation can be the difference between life and death. And so we have a duty and obligation to make sure that our people know what the mission is, know what the end state is, end state operations, know what victory looks like if it can be clearly defined. And right now I don't think we have that. So what I would propose in Afghanistan is you can do more in that country with far less. Now, in 2006, we had one brigade, like roughly 8,000+ warfighters, right? Now, supported by more, but for all of what they call RC East in Afghanistan, Regional Command East. That's the entire border region. And we took the fight to the enemy in a way in 2006 to where in 2007 we were getting intelligence from the front that the Pakistani Taliban were broken. Al-Qaeda was decimated. Haqqani network groups, terrorist Islamic factions on the border, they were broken. Their will to fight was done. We were just killing too many of their sons. They just didn't want to commit their sons to the fight. That was it. And look, this might sound harsh, but you kill the enemy, you secure the people. The people of Afghanistan were starting to enjoy a level of peace and prosperity that they never thought possible in their country. And then President Obama was elected. Maybe even truthfully, just before that, when President Bush was still president, we shifted our strategy from counter-terror, which was finding the bad guys and killing them, to counterinsurgency, which is let's get U.S. soldiers in every village to make sure that they can build a rapport with the people. And so we started building combat outposts. And you see... you've seen the movie The Outpost, and we put them in. We built the very first combat outpost in a place called Combat Outpost Margah, which is right on the border in a horrible location, horrible tactical location, hills surrounding it. And at the tail end of our deployment, that base was attacked by over 300 enemy fighters. Now, we knew that they were coming. We caught them, and we ended up killing every single one of them. But every single year after that, an American combat outpost was attacked and nearly overrun. In some cases, they were overrun. When we shifted our strategy from counter-terror to counterinsurgency, we lost the initiative in Afghanistan because we spread our combat power out too thinly on the border. So most of these combat outposts, yes, they were among the villagers, but we didn't have the manpower to both occupy the bases and patrol offensively. So what does that mean? We just sat there. right? Occupied the bases and just got attacked. And because of that, the enemy was able to penetrate from Pakistan into the heart of Afghanistan. Now the enemy's all over. And so Afghanistan's a tough situation now. Now, where do I fall? So what would I do? I would shift our mission set right now from counterinsurgency, which I think this president has already done, to counterterror, and make sure that we're going after the worst of the worst, right? Let's keep them guessing. Let's keep the enemy guessing. Let's make them never feel comfortable. Make them move from one cave to the next, right? Why? Because the whole reason we went in there was to keep that country from becoming a petri dish for terrorists from which they could launch attacks against the United States or any one of our allies. So you can do that with, a couple of special forces teams, a SEAL team, Delta. You've got a Ranger battalion or maybe a couple infantry battalions for force protection. What that means is like they'll just guard the base, or they'll do outer cordons for kinetic strikes. And when you do that, you afford the Afghan government the ability to project strength and safely secure and govern its people. And so you can do that with a lot less money, and the strategy would be a lot more effective. And it's kind of the middle of the road, right? We pull all our troops out, which would be a humanitarian crisis. We leave all our troops in. The mission is muddied. We don't really have the initiative. It's a mess.
Yeah.
We keep a small group there to target the worst of the worst. We allow the Afghan government to extend its reach, and while maybe we help the Afghan National Army a little bit while we're there to help them secure their people as well.
In Iraq, I think we only have 500.
Yeah, our footprint in Iraq is far smaller, although I do think we've got a plussed-up presence of special forces troops there.
Yeah. What do you think about, we've got all these military bases all over the place, particularly in Europe. Donald Trump was threatening to pull our troops out of Germany. What's your general, I want to hear from somebody who's actually got experience,
I was in Germany. It's an amazing duty assignment, and my experience with the German people is they loved Americans. They liked that we were there.
Well, are they paying their fair share for the GDP for our?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, look, let's be honest. I mean, the American bases in Germany are a tremendous economic boost for that country. But the German people, I think, also appreciate the fact that we're there for them. And we've had a long-standing relationship with Germany. They're one of our main allies in the region. But as our president would say, they're certainly not paying their fair share.
Yeah.
And so,
I have less of an issue with the U.S. having military bases in allied countries, particularly Germany or whatever, if they're not paying and we're providing security. I do think it's particularly funny when it comes to a lot of these left-wing arguments about socialism. The first thing is they think European countries are socialist when they're not. They're just welfare states with, a capitalist economy. But they also don't realize that, for instance, Sweden is I believe, one of the largest weapons exporters per capita. So they make a ton of money shipping out weapons. They can use that to pay for social benefits. And then you have many of these European nations which have security provided for, or at least bolstered by U.S. forces, and they're not paying their targeted GDP into it. So we're fronting that cost.
This is why I appreciate President Trump. Because he challenges the status quo, and ultimately he challenges us to think differently. President Trump brings a different thought process to issues to where, look, both the Washington establishment, both Republicans and Democrats over the years have become sort of set in their ways. We elected President Trump to disrupt that. And that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, God bless a lot of these generals, and I thank him for their service. General Mattis is somebody that I admire greatly. But I don't understand why he went after President Trump the way that he did. I don't get it. Because, just because what the president is proposing that we simply think differently. That's all he's asking. And look, I'm on board with let's get our men and women home from Afghanistan. I've told you that. I think that there's probably a safe middle ground, right? And I've articulated that. But I'm on board with it. Why? Because we've done the same thing for generations. And I'm willing to try something different.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as hard as there's a lot of people who say get our troops out immediately. It's not America's place. We shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
It's not the world that we live in. I mean, maybe you can make that argument for some place like Germany,
right?
But not Afghanistan.
Yeah. I think.
I mean, look. Okay, so here's a good example of this, Tim. Look what happened in Iraq when President Obama pulled our troops out before we were ready. That gave rise to ISIS. That leadership vacuum. We pulled out of that country before strategically we were ready. Right, to leave, and that created ISIS, and ISIS rampaged across the Middle East. And look what President Obama did to the Middle East. All they did was depose autocrats, from Libya to Syria, all over. And what did that do to the Middle East? It just sent the entire. It's a powder keg over there, and President Trump, by and large, is dealing with that now. And the reason why I'm saying all this is look at how President Obama left the Middle East. It was
slavery.
A mess. Yeah, ISIS was at its height of power. The caliphate had thousands of miles of geographic territory. They had physical bases. ISIS is utterly decimated. Okay, and there's a Middle East peace deal that was just brokered. How often have you heard? I mean, I never thought that I'd see that in my life. That's an unbelievable.
And they still came after him for it. What is
this? Could be a precursor to peace in the Middle East in our time. And have you heard about it on the news? This should be round the clock coverage for a month. But you don't hear. Now think about it. Think about how the Middle East was when there was a transfer of power from President Obama to President Trump. I mean, in 3 short years, this president was able to negotiate a Middle East peace deal in which other Arab countries are now jumping on board.
Yep.
Why? Why? Do you want to know why? I'll give you a guess, and I'll answer it for you. Do you know why? Because they all opposed the Iranian nuclear deal.
Yeah.
They all opposed empowering our enemy. You could look up op-eds. I wrote about this before I was even running for political office. The Iranian nuclear deal was an absolute disaster. It empowered the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world, and every Middle Eastern country hated it. And so President Trump, because he opposed that and sought to broker peace deals between Israel and other Arab countries, look, we are on the precipice of an historic peace agreement in the Middle East. I'm telling you, I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime, but this president was able to do it. And so this is why I say, let's just work with the guy. I mean, my God, we don't always have to agree, but let's just work with the guy.
Could it be that peace is the problem for them?
Money to expand on the question.
Money to be made in war.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's like a the military-industrial complex is that whole concept of beware the military-industrial complex. There's probably some wisdom to that. I think that we can, with regards to looking at the Pentagon and figuring out ways that we can tighten our belts there and spend more efficiently. There's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse at the Pentagon, especially with contract procurement processes and stuff like that. We can do better. If you look at the Raptor, what the F-35 project, that's $1 trillion. I don't know. I mean, God, don't quote me on the numbers. There's gonna be somebody out there fact checking me on the numbers after this. But it's a multi-billion-dollar project that could have been a lot cheaper. It could have been done a lot more, for a lot less money in a more efficient way. I think we can look at that. But I personally, I am a big believer in peace through strength.
How do you feel about what happened with Libya? No-fly zones, airstrikes.
Libya, like you're talking about deposing of Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that
we saw he died.
I thought that was horrible.
And now,
I thought and the Libyan people would tell you that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Muammar Gaddafi was a terrible human being, but he was somebody that was willing to work with the United States of America. And sometimes, look, when you're looking at diplomacy, when I was 24 years old leading an infantry platoon in Afghanistan, I've got a rifle across my lap and I'm talking to somebody who I know is a warlord, who I know a week from now is going to be shooting at me in some ditch, might even kill me, but I got to work with him anyway. Because guess what? That's the world that we live in. I mean, there's that line from the Avengers, like we don't see the world as we want it to be. We see the world as it is. Nick Fury said it in a lot sexier way than I did, but it's the truth, right? We deal with the world as it is, not as there we go. We deal with the world as it is, not as how we'd like it to be, And
I think
nobody had faith in President. This is what bothered me. President Trump has consistently defied the odds. He's consistently done things. I mean, look this. There has not been a president in our White House that has been savaged as badly as President Trump, except President Lincoln.
I know he said it too.
Well, yeah, you know what? Did he say that? I don't even know. You're gonna have your people. Oh, he's just parroting Trump talking points.
That's not what I mean. I'm just saying,
he's the most maligned man in the White House.
Yep.
Yet he consistently advances. He advances the agenda of freedom, and I don't understand. I don't understand why people aren't willing to give this man a chance. He's a fighter. He cares about the people.
It could be social media induced derangement that people have formed extremist tribes. They've polarized. There's no middle, and Trump must be bad.
That's why the theme of my speech last night was trying to bring people together, trying to say it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter your gender. Stand with us. Fight for this country.
But they think that's racist. They think you have to. In fact, there's a quote from one of these authors. These leftists.
I'm already sexist. The next thing,
right.
the next thing's going to be Sean's a racist. You watch.
There's a guy who straight up says the only cure for past discrimination is more discrimination. They're absolutely saying they must. And so when you consider yourself a conservative, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'm conservative. Yeah,
I've always, when I was younger, I was far left. You know, I was anarcho, punk, skateboarding, rock.
I listened to punk rock growing up,
and then
but I didn't turn out a radical leftist.
Well, you became a regular guy, I suppose. you like, look, you get a job, you pay taxes, you have a family, you start to understand why things are the way they are. More importantly, you know, all these things you're talking about, especially the Afghanistan stuff, because I've always been very much like, I think Trump is right to bring our troops out. But you made a really good point I hadn't considered before, because I haven't heard it straight to my face. I've heard Dan Crenshaw talk about some of this stuff, and so I certainly respect, you know, the people who've actually been there to tell me, here's what happens if we just up and leave. So I respect you're saying there's a middle ground, but what you've experienced is the world as it is, as you were saying, right? Think about all of these stories. I don't know if you've seen these stories where young people are like, I'm going to go hiking in the hills of Morocco.
And then and they end up getting kidnapped and taken hostage of, like,
worse than that.
Oh, they're going to go hiking through the Iranian mountains or something. And they end up like hostages. I know, it's tragic.
Yeah. And so this, man, I remember this one story where these people were riding their bikes through Tajikistan, and a vehicle pulled over, like yelling ISIS stuff, I guess, and just lopped their heads off right there. I've been around the world, not to places as dangerous as you've been, but I've been in many places. I was in Egypt when the revolution happened, and I've seen what happens when there's no stability, and it's scary.
I agree.
I was looking down from the balcony of the Hilton in Egypt, watching people shoot at each other, and I was just like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to get out of this place. Because I was there as a reporter. I'm watching the APCs roll through. People are screaming and cheering. The fighting broke up. We got out immediately, and then they shut all the bridges down. I come back to this country, and as somebody who grew up on the left, who was always complaining about America and these unjust wars and all this stuff, and I'm like, man, America, imperialism. I'm all young. I got older, and so when I was in Egypt and stuff, I wasn't that dumb. But when I was like 17, writing music and stuff, when I come back from some of these countries, I remember walking up to the immigrations checkpoint. Just one, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I'd been to a bunch of these different countries, and the guy started looking through my passport, and he's like, it's like, what are all these? He's like, a bunch of Arabic stuff. And I started laughing, and I'm like, I am so happy to be back in America, dude. You have no idea. And he laughed, and he's like, all right. And he's like, what do you do? I was like, I'm a journalist. And he's like, I hear you. And then I just like, there's kids, they grew up in this country. They're in cities. They go to colleges. They're pampered. They're protected. They have no idea. They have no idea that we live in this bubble. It's like a walled city, United States, where it's just, we've got our crime. We've got an increase in crime. We've got the lockdown. We've got our problems. But man, I'm sure you could say it better than I could.
Well, I mean, that's the double-edged sword of living in the best country and the most free society on the face of the planet. Where if we live in a free society, right, and generations of which have lived in a free society, most of the time when you're a parent and you've got kids, your goal, once you have those kids, if you're a good mother or father, is to say, you know what, I just want to make sure that the country that they inherit is better than the one I have. And so every generation, our country gets a little better, a little better, a little better. And so we've got a lot of people in this country, when you've got only 0.4% of the people who've served who go out and defend freedom on a day-to-day basis, everybody else just sort of enjoys the trappings and blessings of living in a free society, which can afford them views that are inherently, in some cases, the antithesis of being in a free society.
Yep.
Right? And it's a conundrum.
It's funny, because I mention this kind of often. I like to offer up to my progressive friends an opportunity to go anywhere in the world. It's a dream come true. Name one of your causes that you're so enthusiastic about, and I will see to it you get there, and we'll get you a good guide, and they're gone in 2 seconds. Because when they, I was talking to one guy who was complaining about Gaza and Israel and all that stuff, and I was like, how would you like to go there? Wait, what? Yeah, how would you like to have a flight? Because we can film it. We can make it a thing, like your experience. You're this activist. You talk about this all the time. How would you like to be there? Gone, 2 seconds. I got friends talking
Like,
about
wait, they go in 2 seconds, or they're like, I don't
no,
wanna go.
like they're just stop talking.
Yeah.
Just conversation's over. I'm not going there. Are you crazy? I have this one friend who's I've known for a really long time, preaching up a storm about Black Lives Matter, lives in Chicago. I grew up in Chicago. They know what Chicago's like. And so I'm like, this dude lives in the suburbs. I said, I'll tell you what, I will hire you to produce a video. I'm not going to name the neighborhoods in Chicago because I don't want to offend anybody, but they got some neighborhoods in Chicago, man. Yeah, you're not going to survive. I'm not even kidding. There's gang initiations where they literally just kill random people. Now, if you're the wrong race walking in a dangerous gang territory, you could find yourself seriously hurt. That's in America. They call it Chirac for a reason. I started talking to some of my friends about all of their preaching, and I said, would you like to go and do interviews? And they shut up immediately, because what bothers me the most about a lot of these activists who preach all this stuff, the people I know in Chicago know exactly what Chicago is like. There's rampant racism across the board between all races. There's gang violence. There's crime. It is not some, it's not an oppressive patriarchy or whatever. The cops aren't going around, going and like trying to just randomly kill people.
All like the Penguin and Batman. Or
exactly. I mean, look, Chicago's had its problem with corrupt government officials and police.
Sure, yeah.
But, this goes for the cops everywhere in the country. They're not going out being like, oh, I hope today I'm going to kill somebody. Like, that's the last thing they want to do. It's scary.
No, it's true.
But there's these people like to preach all this stuff. I see these memes they post, like a tweet from somebody saying, like, the police are a death squad that goes around hunting people down. And I'm like, how'd you like to go to a police department, sit down and talk to one of these guys? Gone, they don't want to do it. And I'm like, that's not even dangerous.
It's true.
Let alone go to any of these neighborhoods. Yeah, they don't want to do it either.
Like, it goes without saying that 99.9% of cops are good. Nobody dislikes bad cops more than good cops, right? And you go and talk to these people, and I love the police in my community. I support them because I know how tough the job is, man. I mean, you're making split-second life and death decisions. These people wake up every day, they put a gun on their hip, a badge on their chest, and they don't know if they're coming home. And I'm sorry, there's something noble in that. Yeah. And it's an imperfect job. It's really difficult. Do they always make the right decisions? Absolutely not. But I love and appreciate the police, and I talk to them. When I go to their departments and I talk to them, they will tell you that, some of the worst areas of crime in their communities, they like to go to the best because they want those kids to have a shot. They care. And so when I see this crazy defund the police stuff, it just makes me hurt for the police and for the communities that would be affected by it. It's just not right. And it's all in the service of what? A political agenda being pushed by the Democrats that's not. And by the way, well, Joe Biden doesn't want to defund the police. He just wants to redirect their funding. Again, a clever manipulation. I'm like, you watch the interview with Chris Wallace and President Trump, and Chris Wallace is pressing President Trump, as he should. Journalists should press political officials, right? But, well, Joe Biden doesn't want to defund the police. And Trump's like, yes, he does. Well, no, he doesn't. He said he just wants to redirect our funds. And I'm thinking, like, Chris, if I redirected funds from your paycheck and gave it to another anchor, would you feel like you were defunded?
This is really funny because Joe Biden's running full speed as far away from that as he can now.
Absolutely is, yes.
So at the time, the Brookings Institute specifically said, what does defund the police mean? It doesn't mean abolishing the police. It just means reallocating funds to other programs. So when Joe Biden was asked, do you support reallocating funds from police to other programs? He goes, yes, absolutely.
I remember, yes.
But now he's like, so here's what's really funny. I think the fact checkers should clarify that he backed off that very, very quickly. And now he's absolutely trying to be like, I'm gonna give him funding. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. If you want to catch the full show, tune in to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, or check us out on iTunes and Spotify. And we will soon have this podcast up for free on all podcast platforms. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next episode.